This week's pillar to a successful marriage, having fun in the bedroom. You're not going to want to let the kiddos listen to this one, guys. Let's fucking go. Mic check. Is this thing on? What's going on, guys? My name is Shawn. We're at the Derek's Live. I'm going to be your host tonight, and I'm here with my beautiful wife and co-host, Emily. How you doing, sexy?
I'm here.
Oh, are you ever? You look nervous.
I'm a little bit nervous.
A little bit nervous. Don't be nervous. This one's going to be fun. Mm-hmm. It's a fun subject.
It is.
So... well, guys, this week we are talking about sex. You got kiddos in the car, you're listening while you're cooking, or this is not probably one that you want to listen with the kiddos around. So we just want to give you that disclaimer. We know that we usually cuss a lot. Our kids cuss a lot though too. So that doesn't, I mean, do you, but probably want to remove them from the conversation on this one. Just for full disclosures. So, what we got, Emily?
Well, we just want to welcome you. Starting off the new year right. This is our second episode of the new year.
Yeah,
so it's our first.
The second.
So 2 episodes in for the new year.
Whoop, whoop.
So welcome. We are excited to go on this journey with you. Make sure that you are liking, sharing, and subscribing. If you're on any of the podcasts, websites, make sure that you're following us. It helps with the algorithm so other people can see us and learn about the Derek's Live podcast. So, and this is one specifically that we're going to ask for some cool feedback and just your comments. So as we ask some questions, please feel free to private message us or comment on Facebook or on YouTube. We would really like to see kind of where you guys are at.
Make sure you're hitting all them buttons.
All the buttons.
All the buttons. It helps us a lot.
I'm a little nervous. We've had multiple conversations and we've kind of moved this episode a couple of times. And it's something that we're passionate about and we're excited about. And we have our notes, but I also know who I married. And so there's a variable here that I cannot control.
I'm going to be good.
Ish.
She knew the ish was coming. So, but yeah, I mean, this is a fun one. I hope it's fun for you too. There's probably some of you that got a little bit uncomfortable just seeing the title of this though. And we want you to know it's okay. We're going to be here with you for the whole duration. Just sit down and, in a dark room and nobody's going to judge you. It's okay. You can talk about sex. It's not going to hurt you. I promise.
Deep breath.
Here we go. All right. So this was I think we're so passionate about this because we got some pretty cool advice early on in our marriage.
Yeah, the very first marriage advice we ever got.
So we got married. We were 19, 20.
19, 20.
And I married a cougar. It's awesome.
Rawr.
But we were doing marriage counseling because in Florida you get a discount on your marriage license, and I'm cheap. So
well, we were broke.
We were broke. Yeah, we were broke. I think when we got married, the lights to our house were actually turned off the week that we got married. We were broke as shit.
Yeah.
Marry me for my potential, baby, not what I could offer you. That's the truth. I felt like I've lived up to my end of the bargain, though.
You have, and then some.
So, but we're doing our marriage counseling, and this pastor that married us, that is someone that we respect greatly and very revered as my childhood pastor, said, hey, just have fun in the bedroom. You'll be all right.
And the 19 and 20-year-old sitting there like squirmed in our seats like, hold on, what did he tell us?
Yes. Yes.
Can you elaborate?
So it's and it's held true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a very foundational point of our relationship. And guys, it's not just about sex, right? It's about intimacy too. And I think that's where some of us miss it, is we don't define or distinguish the two. We think that they're the same thing. And they can be tied together, but they're not the same thing.
Right. You can definitely have sex without intimacy.
Absolutely.
And you can be intimate without having sex.
Absolutely. So
but when you marry the two, there really is something magical that happens. And I think that that's what separates sex and marital sex that's intimate. And that's what when you see somebody who really does a marriage that goes the distance, they're intimate, and they're intimate on purpose.
Yeah.
So,
but before we get too far, we want to address the uncomfortableness of the subject, right? Because it can be an uncomfortable subject. And I think you have to ask yourself why you find the subject uncomfortable. Because I think what we've found is we're very comfortable talking openly with people about sex, because we don't feel like it's a taboo subject. I think we have a lot of friends who ask us for advice, and we pour into people in sexual discussion, because it's not uncomfortable. It's not taboo for us. So, but we have this ideology wrapped around sex that's really formed in church.
and it's kind of, I think starting off, we learned very early on, like sex was very off limits. It was for procreation. It wasn't supposed to be pleasurable. At least for me in our church, it was discussed as we don't really talk about this in public. It's a private conversation for certain times. And within the church, it's like, it's for procreation. It's not for pleasure. And like masturbation was off limits, and exploring your sexuality was off limits. And like, you were not supposed to feel sexual. And if you did, then there was something wrong with you and you needed to repent.
Oh yeah. Like there was like, you were evil if you thought about sex as a kid or a teenager, right?
We actually, they came to our church at one point, and like they brought pins and little certificates that the purities, and like you weren't supposed to masturbate and think about sex.
So I think like, and guys, like I'm not going to get into the masturbation discussion on biblical and sin or not, but I think the argument is like, when the Bible was written, girls got married at like 13.
Yeah, 12
and 13 years old.
Yeah. Many times before puberty.
So they didn't have to deal with a lot of those hormonal things then, because it wasn't, and that's not here nor there. We're not going to get too far into that. But I think that the subject and the point is that we want you to understand that a lot of these foundational things that you think are biblical are not biblical.
Right.
God created us to be sexual beings. That's why humans enjoy sex. There's pleasure attached to it. And I think so often we hear ideologies that are taught that it's just for procreation. It's a tool that we use to reproduce, and that's it. You're not supposed to enjoy it. Or that a man should get it whenever he wants and at his disposal, and that you should submit to that.
Right. And it's the woman's duty to basically fulfill all of her husband's desires and not necessarily get it reciprocated.
So, and there's not any biblical foundation to that, guys. Sex is something that we should be able to talk about and have discussion about. And I think that marriages in the church specifically would be much more long lasting if the church was more open about this subject, because it's really something that I know early on in our marriage, when we had some struggles, that there wasn't anybody we felt like we could talk to about sex.
Well, and as we've gotten older, and had some health issues and some hormonal changes, because starting off, I think that we both we had pretty high sex drive starting off, and we were young and we went all through our 20s, but having children and adopting children and the stress of all of that, and then the actual hormonal changes that came with pregnancy and postpartum really were a shakeup for the two of us, because it was something that we weren't anticipating or really knew how to deal with. And there wasn't anybody to talk to about it.
Yeah, there's no resource. So, and so, we have this idea of sex that's it's not accurate. And so I think one of the things that men miss the most is fulfilling their role in 1 Corinthians 7:3 and 5.
So this was really interesting as we dove into this scripture. And it says the husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. But in the same way, the husband does not have authority over his body, but he yields it to his wife. And this is a beautiful scripture, but in context, this is profound.
Well, what we were talking about, to back up just a little bit, in retrospect, I think the only time that I've ever heard this scripture used in church is to tell women that they have a duty and that they shouldn't weaponize sex against their husband, because they can't withhold
because it's in the Bible.
That's the only time you really hear this scripture quoted. And I might be wrong about that. If your pastor's using this in this sense, that's friggin' awesome. But the overwhelming majority of people are not contextualizing this in its entirety. And so what it says and what we miss is that the husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife. Guys, that means you got to make her come. That's what that means. Let's just be real, right? Like, that's what that means. Like, it's not just about you. I don't understand these men who have no ideology, like they don't have any recognition or input that their wife needs to get there too.
Well, that it should be pleasurable for her, and it's not just a 5-minute thing and then we're done. A lot of times it takes more than just physical touch for a woman to really get to climax. It takes the kissing and the touching and a lot of times talking. And it's really interesting scripturally that it says that he should do it first, that it's his duty first, that he should lead by example. And historically, when I say profound. This is a patriarchal community, a patriarchal society, a world that
you've got to think about the time that this text was written.
So this is absolutely beyond. This was not discussed any other place.
Mm-hmm.
So for them to write this in the Bible and for it to continue throughout history as a scripture that has held on is really very profound. Because for a man to say that I don't have control of my body, I'm yielding it to a woman, is absolutely just, it would bring you to your knees for most societies. But there's something to be said here that the man should lead by example, that he should do his duty first and please his wife first. And then the wife likewise should do for him. And it also says not to withhold it unless the two parties agree. So it shouldn't be weaponized, absolutely. But you're not supposed, it's your obligation to your spouse both ways.
Yeah. But it's not one-sided, right?
Correct.
It's not. And I think, I know as a man and having conversations with other men that it's not a forceful thought for most guys, I don't know, you're obligated to take time, and it's not, listen guys, it's not just sexual, right? There's intimacy involved in that. And to Emily's point, what you have to understand is if your sex life is not where you want it to be, it's because you're not being intimate with your spouse. And for us, we think intimacy just involves our cock, and it doesn't, right? You've got to back up and figure out what makes her tick, right? Because if you're not you're not fulfilling that, she's not going to fulfill your need. And they go hand in hand. And so it's backing up and understanding like, hey, she likes it when I hold her hand. She likes it when I do the dishes or bring her a coffee or whatever that looks like for your wife. But you've got to be intimate with her on a daily basis for it to feed into your form of intimacy.
And likewise, women, you should know what makes your husband tick. Does he like to hold hands? I know about my husband that he likes physical touch.
I'm a big teddy bear.
But
come get you some.
That was hard for me. Yeah. I am not a physical touch person. And so one of the very first things that we learned is holding hands in the car. Mm-hmm. And it's the silly thing, but I know that brings him comfort. I know that is intimate for him. And it kind of crosses that barrier that we are intimate even when we're not physically having sex, that our intimacy carries over in our day to day. We kiss each other in the morning when we get up. Mm-hmm. We always kiss each other before we leave or we leave the house if he goes to work or if I'm leaving with the kids. And you are purposeful to always come and find me when you come home and to kiss me when you get home. And most of the time, if we're not having sex before we go to bed, that at the very least, we kiss each other goodnight. And that's most of the time we're trying to be intimate before bed, but not always, but we always take the time to at least kiss and hold each other before we go to bed.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much that just becomes routine for us that I don't think we really appreciate everything that we actually do for one another. And we were talking about this leading up to the episode and just getting ready to record that like, there are certain things that we do that like, I don't even.
Yeah, so I made this point, like, you don't understand how special it is to me that when you come home and you know that I've had a long day, that you've gone out of your way, or maybe you didn't, but you brought me a cup of coffee, and it's a $4 cup of iced black coffee. It's not anything over the top. It's not a bouquet of flowers, but that is my love language that you.
She does speak in coffee. Dark roast.
Not just coffee, but the fact that I know that I was on your mind, that I wasn't an afterthought, that you thought enough of me in whatever you had going on. Because I know that your days are hectic, that they're busy. A lot of times they're very stressful. But at some point in their day, you thought, hey, I am going to bring my wife a cup of coffee on my way home. And I'm going to probably get a cup of coffee to share with her. And it was like this aha moment. As I looked into his eyes, he's like, hold on. That's intimacy?
Well, like, guys, I don't know. I like making you happy,
right?
You know? And so to me, like I said, like when you commit to spend your life with somebody, you commit to bring that person happiness for the rest of their life. And I know that makes you happy. And to me, it's unfathomable that you wouldn't do everything you could to make your spouse happy. I don't get that. And I think that there is some bitterness that we allow to pour into our relationships, that we almost go out of our way to not make each other happy sometimes. And it's spiteful. Yeah. And I think that's how you get to a really unhealthy place really fast in those moments. And so you've got to figure out a way to be intimate without sex. Yeah. Because when you can figure that out, it makes your intimacy during sex that much more like magical. It's so much more and deeper, and it's hard to explain, but
and especially for women, it bridges the gap, because for us, for the majority of the time, it's not a switch. It is very much like a pot of water on the stove.
Yeah.
We have to be warmed up. It is not a light switch going into the bedroom. We are not a microwave. We are a stove. We are an oven. We need to preheat.
For us, it's very much like, hey, it's hard. Let's do something about it.
So, and I think that's where a lot of the issues come from. Like, no, you're on, let's go. And we often forget, like, hold on, I'm not even like the dishes are in the sink. The kid is still sleeping. Like they're not fully asleep. I know that there's a load of laundry that needs to be switched. My brain is so not in this like physical moment. Yeah. I'm proud of you that you have that, but that's not where I'm at. Let's even this out. And so it's a learning curve, and it's remembering that your spouse works differently than you do. How do you meet her where she's at, and where do you meet him where he's at?
Well, and so to add to that, if you're doing those little things along the way to keep that pot on simmer, maybe bring it up to medium every now and then, it makes it a lot easier in those moments that, hey, it's hard, let's do something about it. Well, now you're not starting with cold water, you know, because you've been a dickhead all week long and you haven't been paying attention. And so if you're not happy with how much intimacy you're getting, there's probably a reason for that. And part of the reason is probably you. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the whole reason. It's a two-way street, but part of it is you, and you need to figure out like, hey, what could I be doing better to grow closer and to have those moments of intimacy. So
give us a couple of examples of what you do during the week to kind of keep me at simmer.
Oh,
PG-13.
Oh, PG, that's no fun. That's no fun. So, I'm very purposeful to tell Emily that she's beautiful all the time.
Constantly.
And it's almost like over the top sometimes. But
most of the time.
But I'm a very touchy-feely person. Like my love language is physical touch. Mm-hmm. And so every time that butt passes me, I'm touching it. Every time. Right? And she's gotten to the point that she gets offended sometimes. If I'm like preoccupied, like I was shaving the other day and she walked by me naked in the bathroom and she's like, "Oh, you didn't touch it." I was like, "A fucking razor in my hand. What do you mean I didn't touch it?"
But it's become so common that I do. I look for like, well, what did I do wrong? Why are you not touching my butt?
But even in the little moments, like I try to stay very in tune with your mental space, because you're a stay-at-home mom and you homeschool, and I know she doesn't get the breaks that I do. Mm-hmm. And so like there's some moments that I'm like, no, you just like go. Like and she's like, well, what? Like I'm not upset. I'm not like, I know, but I can. I'm here. Take an hour and go do, right? And it allows you to hit that mental switch and refresh. And it benefits me later because you're in a better headspace. Like there's motivation behind it sometimes. But I know that you need that level-headed and clearness to be able to be intimate. I bring you coffee all the time. I mean, like I said, most of it's just so routine.
Yeah, you don't even think about it. That it's become so common. But then there are times that I feel like you almost go out of your way. You know that I've had a couple of hard days, that we've struggled being intimate, and you've gone like, so a couple of nights ago when it was really cold, and it's been a few weeks, but it was really cold, and we live out away from the light. So when it gets cold and really dark in the middle of the night, you can see the stars forever. Especially
this time of year when it's colder.
Yeah. It's like so much so that you can actually see like the Milky Way. Yeah. Like it's wild.
It's beautiful.
So he came home late, and I'd had a long day, and he helped me clean the kitchen, and I was like getting ready for bed and putting on sweatpants. He's like, "Hold on, throw a sweatshirt on." And he was like grabbing blankets and pillows. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he had pulled our drinks out and our coffee, and he grabbed the pillows and the big picnic blanket that we use that's like just an oversized comforter, and he's like throwing all of it outside on the back steps. Like, what are you doing? He's like, "We're gonna go outside, just get something warm on, put shoes on, put socks on."
It was like 35 degrees.
It was freezing. And we took all of our stuff outside and lit a fire, and we laid out under the stars for like, I don't know, like an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was a long time.
We didn't have sex. It was the most intimate, beautiful moment, just holding each other snuggling under the stars, and we didn't talk about anything profound. We didn't really even catch up about the day. We just enjoyed each other's company. And it was something that you did purposely to encourage that intimacy and really turn that. We went from a simmer really up to like a rapid boil
like a
pretty quickly.
Boil when we came inside, buddy. But I mean, it's those little things that you tend to forget to do the longer you've been together.
Yeah.
I think that when you first like are dating and courting each other, you do all these over the top things that are just not who you really are. Right. Yeah. We were talking with someone the other day who was like that's like, I felt like it was false advertisement because that's not what I signed up for. Mm-hmm. But it changes. Like that's just the reality. And I think you have to be really purposeful to find those special moments with your spouse, especially when there's children at home and you don't get a lot of those moments, right? We don't get a lot of opportunity without our kids. So we have to be purposeful to find time in our day-to-day stuff. Kids are in bed. Let's go outside and just enjoy the quietness. And it really is. It's a very intimate time. So,
and this is something that I didn't even put in our notes, but we are modeling that appropriate intimacy for our children to see.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
That is so important that they will learn to expect it and how to give it and know that it's appropriate and live in a relationship that they know that it's give and take.
Yeah, well, you've heard me say it before. Your sons are going to love the way that you love their mother, and they're going to let themselves be loved the way that their mother loves their father. Yeah. And same goes for your daughters. Your daughters are going to let a man love them the way that you love their mother. And they're going to let a man treat them the way that you treat their mother. And man, if that hurts you, you better change some shit quick. That terrified me the first time I heard it. Like, yeah.
Would you let your daughter be in a relationship with someone like you?
So and that's the reality. But you've got to own that, and you've got to set the example and be the reason that they end up with a good spouse. Mm-hmm. And so like, we pray for our girls every night. And my prayer for them is always that they find a good husband who will love them and cherish them as much or more than their daddy does.
So, and they see every day, it's those little things that you always kiss me goodbye. You always kiss me hello. You always embrace me. And they are watching that. And now they've come to expect, oh, Daddy, I need.
Oh, yeah. It's really funny how they're like, oh, Daddy, where's my kiss? Daddy, I want a hug before you leave. So,
and if you sneak out the door and they're like busy, they will run after you, making sure that nobody leaves the house.
It is really cool to kind of connect how that pours over into their attitudes in their day to day, how they expect me to love them the way that I love you. So,
because we're setting that example, they're learning what intimacy looks like, and they're learning to expect it and become intimate beings themselves. So, and
Emily's looking at our next note.
The next bullet point. Shit. So here we go. So this is something that we've become passionate about, but it's been something that has kind of been a subject that has kind of been taboo, and it's experimenting in the bedroom, and it's using toys in the bedroom.
Well, just having fun. A good time, right? Listen, I think that every person has their own sexual needs and desires, right? It's our responsibility to figure out what those are for our spouse. I think early on we had discussions about each other's fantasies and desires and what did it for us. And we were willing to explore those even in uncomfortableness, I think. I think that there's a connotation from the Christian viewpoint that like missionaries it and like, I can't, like, you're not doing nothing else outside of that. But there isn't a biblical foundation for that. No. I remember I was sitting in a Bible study one time, and a younger husband was asking the pastor, that it was a marriage discussion, and the younger husband was asking the pastor about sex toys. And he was like, oh, no, there's no reason for that. And, you don't need to do that. And that's a sin. And I say, hey, listen, where's the scripture to support that? Because there isn't one. Like, it's not like, if the only argument you could make is that to buy a sex toy at this pastor's age, he would have had to probably go into a store that would have been a pornography store and expose himself to pornography. And I guess you can make an argument for that, but it's 2023 and you can get dildos on the internet. So
you can get them at Walmart now.
You don't have to expose yourself to some of the things you used to have to expose yourself to before, to experiment with some of those things. And like, I'm not just talking about like inanimate objects, but there are certain things that you can purchase to assist in the bedroom that will enhance your sex life. You talk now.
It's been interesting. Some of you may or may not know this, but for a short time, I actually sold sex toys. And it was interesting because a lot of these married women would come to me and they would ask questions. And there were a handful of women that had never climaxed with their spouse.
That's insane to me.
But not uncommon.
Like, listen, man, if your wife is not climaxing regularly, shame on you, man. Shame on you. Like, could you imagine going through your entire life and not climaxing regularly as a man? Could you imagine that? Shame on you.
But it's a double standard, and it's not just in the church. It's you're everywhere.
right. That's not a Christian problem.
No.
It's a man problem.
So, the conversation was, well, I don't want him to feel inadequate, but maybe I just can't. And so and I actually heard that 3 different times. Well, maybe it's a me thing. I just can't.
Well, listen, bro, I'm going to tell you right now, it's not your competition. It's your teammate.
And that was exactly the conversation I had. So like there, and it's not just inanimate objects. There are supplements. There are lubes and oils like other things that you can do to help in that aspect, to kind of help encourage the climax and encourage the intimacy that can be used with your partner. It's not something you have to do alone. Mm-hmm. And please use your partner. It's much more fun. But I think knowing that those products are out there is part of the issue. Like, you don't know where to look. You don't know who to ask. And I think that as in this space that we're kind of opening this door, like, hey, if this is something you're struggling with, let's talk about it. And I think that that's a new conversation for a lot of people, that we've not talked about it for so long, that now we're having these conversations for the first time in our 30s or 40s. And it's like, okay, this is really uncomfortable. I don't know how to handle this, but this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful thing to have kind of gained some really beautiful friendships in this process, not just with the women, but with the couples that have confided in us. Like, how can we make this better? I want to fix this. And that's the very first part of the conversation, is you have to want to fix what's not working. And it starts with a conversation, and then it's exploring all of the different things. There's so many marital tools that you can use that will help benefit your sex life. And only about 50% of them are toys. There are like natural herbs and supplements. There's exercises that you can do together. Yoga is a wonderful tool for both the husband and the wife.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things that we did early on was we bought a Kama Sutra book.
Yeah.
Just to kind of explore what was possible, because we didn't know. We were young. We're like, hey, what kind of positions can we put each other in? and I'm a big dude, so get that visual mind or picture burned into your head.
So, and that's our next, like, we laughed in the bedroom all the time. And Kama Sutra was a great source of laughter for us, because it was comical and it was fun. It was pleasurable. It was enjoyable, but it was absolutely hysterical about 90% of the time. So laugh in the bedroom. It's okay to laugh. It's supposed to be funny sometimes, and not always, but it's okay to laugh. Don't get offended if somebody makes
have fun together, right? And like, stop being such a fucking prude. Like, it's not like if you're not having fun in the bedroom with your spouse, you're really missing out. Yeah. It's such a fun, intimate place to really explore each other and figure out what's possible between you, and go places you haven't been before. I mean, do things you haven't done before, push boundaries and explore different things. I really encourage you to get out of, well, not out of your comfort zone, but find your spouse's comfort zone and like exploit it.
Well, and I think that the experimenting conversation, that the main takeaway there we want for you is talk about what you want to try, and as a couple agree on where the line is and what the limit is, and don't do something that the other spouse isn't comfortable with. Right? You need to both be comfortable with whatever it is that you're trying. But I think outside of that what you're comfortable with and where you're at, that's still safe in the bedroom. And it's okay to have that kind of intimacy in the bedroom if you're both in the same mindset and you're in agreement that that's what you want to try. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And don't limit yourself to just being intimate on a date or in the bedroom, like in the bed. Be intimate, sneak in and have a shower with her in the morning or at night. Rub her back, massage her feet, and do some of this without expectation of something in return. Not always, but there should be times that you give not expecting anything in return. That's okay.
Absolutely.
And that will lead to more intimacy and a greater expectation than you'll ever understand. If it's not always like, oh, I gave you that, so now I deserve this. That's not how this works. It's a balance. I am giving of myself to whatever extent I can, and when you are able, you give of yourself. And so ladies out there, let me encourage you that if you're struggling with your sex drive, if it's something that has kind of been weak, if your husband's sex drive is really, really high and yours is not matching his, and you want to change that, there are things out there that you can do to encourage and influence your sex drive.
Well, I think like that's a good point to bring up, Emily. I think, we struggled in the last couple of years with our sex life because of having children and what it did physically and mentally to you and our home life and the family aspect. There was a fluctuation there in
a huge fluctuation. We went from having sex multiple times a day to maybe having it once or twice a week.
Oh, I mean, there was a couple times that we would go weeks between.
Yeah.
So
that was hard.
I mean, and listen, like that's not an exaggeration, but like there were moments that we would have sex usually more than once a day throughout our marriage. We both have a very high sex drive. And so we came out of childbirth with this new fluctuation. It's like, hey, this isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah.
This isn't where either of us have been. This is false advertisement. What the fuck? So, but I had to step back and understand and be in tune with what was going on with you, so that we could work through it together. And I think that's what so many of us guys miss. We just expect our spouse to be on the same level as us all the time. And that's just not how it works.
Well, and women, I think sometimes we kind of get to this place that it's just easier to not deal with it and leave it alone. And it is what it is. And I want to express to you, as someone who's been there, who's struggled, who's had pain, who's had some like traumatic birth experience, a little like with trauma and like physical pain and then hormonal fluctuations, that it doesn't have to be what it is. There are things that you can do to change that. And if that's something that you're struggling with, please feel free to private message us. But there's also research and like hormonal doctors that you can talk to. Yoga has been a huge difference maker for me personally. It's helped balance out my hormones. And it has changed our sex life and kind of helped us kind of get healthy again together, which has been an awesome thing.
Yeah. I mean, and being willing to have that conversation is the biggest thing, guys. Like next week, we're going to really dig into communication. That's our topic for next week. But I think one of the things that we really do that's successful is we talk at length about our sex life. It's a very common subject in our alone time together, that we talk through things that are going on in our sex life and things that we liked or didn't like, or how to enhance, or
could you try this?
Yeah.
Maybe we could try this position. Maybe we could try it in a different place. Maybe it's just like, can you hold me different?
Mm-hmm.
Can we listen to music? Can we do something? Can we find a babysitter? So, and it's talking about all of those different aspects in private together, so that we both know where each other's at.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done the same, that you've had those conversations with me, and they're hard to hear because I wasn't on the same page as you. And you're like, I'm struggling. We went from having a lot of sex to not having hardly any sex.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really struggling. And it was a hard conversation to listen to and to have, but it was still, we needed to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's helped us kind of heal and find solutions that maybe we wouldn't have had we just left it alone. I'm like, well, maybe he's where I'm at too, and he doesn't want to have sex with me, and I don't want to have sex at all. And it's just what it is. And instead you came to me, and you wasn't in anger. It wasn't in like, you weren't trying to put me down. You were like, listen, I'm struggling, and I need to just talk this through. How do we fix this?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't, you weren't telling me that I was broken. You never like made me feel like less than I am. And thank you for seeing me where I was at. 'Cause that was a hard conversation, but it was something that we needed so that we could both move forward.
Yeah.
And so for you spouses out there, if you're struggling with this, be mindful how you have the conversation, that we're not going in just to critique everything and to tear them apart.
Listen, you need to add value to your spouse, right? And so you're not going to get anywhere if you go in a defensive state and try to have a conversation. It's meeting your spouse where they're at. And so I think and listen, just full like transparency, Emily had some pain and stuff that was a result of childbirth. And so she physically couldn't have sex for a while. And so it was a conversation where we had to talk about like, hey, what do we need to do? How do we fix this? What is there positions, or, what can we do to work through this? And we were able to have some conversations and figure out what's working, what's not working. And we've adjusted our sex life, and it's been phenomenal for a while now. So it's, but things change in your marriage, in your sex life, and you can't just expect for things to stay on this even plateau forever. It might stay for a while, but there's going to be a fluctuation somewhere, and you need to be in tune with that with your spouse and be able to talk through it and have those conversations.
And be flexible and be open to learning something new.
Mm-hmm.
That there really is something that's really fun and adventurous when you let it happen. It doesn't always have to be like the same old sex that you've had since you were 19. There are new things that you can figure out, and maybe that will help both of you enjoy sex even more. And it's, for us, it's kind of helped the healing process to figure out some different things that we hadn't tried before.
Yeah.
So now you know a little bit more about the Derricks.
Fun stuff. So we've got a challenge for you.
This is the challenge.
So listen, we know that there's a lot of you guys out there that are listening to this, and you're like, yeah, that's fun, but like, I don't even like my spouse anymore. Or they're not that person. They're not sexual. They're just not. And so we want to challenge that thought and dare you to do some things with intentionality in the next couple days and couple weeks and couple months that become habit for you. So Emily, let's
So dare number 1, for the next 7 days consistently, we want you to kiss your spouse.
And not like not like just a little peck.
Yeah, not a peck on the cheek or a peck on the lips. A kiss.
A kiss.
A real kiss. 7 to 10 seconds.
Have you seen that TikTok challenge? Have you seen the TikTok challenge where the guys are grabbing their spouse by like the back of the neck and like just like laying one on them? Do that, but not so violent. I mean, you can do it.
Or maybe.
Oh, yeah. So if your wife is as kinky as Emily is, do that. But you know your wife.
And we want you to kiss them in the morning when you wake up, before you leave for work, when you return from work, and before you go to bed. So at minimum,
4 times a day.
Good kisses a day. In addition to that, we want you to take something every day to think about your spouse and express your love for them in some way. Now, this can be as big and grandiose as taking the time to plan a weekend away and finding a babysitter. But it can also be as something as small as a text message to say, I love you and I am thinking about you. Or how can I help you today?
Put a little note in your husband's lunchbox if you make him lunch, or
a sticky note in his car or on the mirror.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be grandiose. Anything that you do that separates what you've been doing to something new, to challenge that, is going to add intimacy to your relationship. And it's for both of you. So it goes both ways. So both of you find this moment and think about your spouse and do something for them during this week.
And listen, you might be saying like, hey, my spouse isn't going to listen to this. They're not going to do that.
That's okay.
That's okay. Do it anyway without them. Like that's how you get started, right? When you are intentional about this, and your spouse will notice as you form this habit and you're doing it over and over and over again, that like, okay, why are they kissing me so much all of a sudden? What's going on here? And then you start being intentional about telling them that you love them and that they're beautiful, and leaving notes and doing things for them. Guys, this is what fosters intimacy. And so start it. They don't have to be on the same page as you, whether they are or not. If you can do it together, that's awesome. But if you can't, do it anyway.
Yeah.
It's a fun one.
Yeah. So it wasn't as hard as I thought.
Did I behave? I feel like I behaved
did.
pretty good. So
I'm just going to stop the recording now before something else happens.
Emily gave me all kinds of rules before we started. So, but seriously, guys, like there's good sex lives out there. Like you hear this like, oh, once you get married, you don't ever get to have sex again. And that's just not true. Like if you're married and you're not having sex, it's because you're not putting in the work to have sex.
And great sex, not just sex.
Not just sex.
It's great sex.
Great sex.
This is the person that you chose. Know them and enjoy them.
Yeah.
So we love you guys. Fuck your excuses.
We're going to go have sex now. Y'all have a
Jesus
good night.
fucking loves you.